That's the best way.
I
Because
can't do
it
math.
exposes everyone who doesn't know how to do math.
It exposes I can do my parse, but I can't fucking.
One isn't a prime number, y'all.
Hey there, Warriors of Light. Welcome to another episode of the Free Company Chat. Today's topic is probably one of our favorite 24-man alliance content, the Ivalice raids. I am your host, Chris, and with me is Kevin.
Hey.
And Ryan, the ultimate Ivalice historian.
Hello.
Before we get into this, we have exciting news. You can now find us on Spotify. We are adding our previous episode for you to enjoy and listen to. So we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a follow there. Thanks.
So I think the best place to start the story is to go thousands and thousands of years back and just immediately start with the Zodiac Braves Story. Actually, even before that.
Oh, jeez.
We're going to go even further beyond that and just go straight to Saint Ajora and what they accomplished. Because that's where the real story of the return to Ivalice raids start, is with Ajora. So Ajora, also known as Saint Ajora, is a person who was sick and tired of Muland, which at the time was the capital city of then Ivalice. And so Muland was your standard typical like tyrannical government. They took and took and took from all of the poor, from the commoners, and then lived in like beautiful palaces, like full gluttonous meals, all of that shit. And so Muland was their capital, which was just a little bit outside of Ivalice on like an island built on the seas itself. And so Ajora got sick and tired of this. Although there are some reports that Ajora was like an actual like assassin or like a spy that was sent to like make this unrest, but that's not like confirmed one way or the other. But to make it like put all that aside, so Ajora basically starts preaching to everybody, is like causing an uprising, and it's just like, hey, I'm sick and tired of this. You guys should be sick and tired of this too. Let's uprise against these people. And so it starts off as like little preaches in the streets where he only has like a dozen people listening to him, slowly builds and builds into a full army, where with the full army, he ends up going into war with then Ivalice's kingdom over at the capital of Muland. So this capital goes into war with its own people in this uprising, in this revolution, and they battle it out for like some 20 years for like just this whole war against each other. And at this point, the Zodiac Braves had sided with Ajora at this point. And so these Zodiac Braves are 12 warriors 11 warriors, because Ajora also had one of the aura sites. But they have these special aura sites where they are able to harness power and gain their needs and wants from it, and it allows it to grant wishes for them to be able to battle and to help people fight this war against Muland. And so with this, they're able to help fight against the huge empire that is over in Ivalice and like be able to hold off the armies. But this battle, like this war keeps going on for 20 years. And so people are getting tired. No headways really busting through and everything. And so what happens is Ajora themselves decides to finally end the war for good. And so they go to Muland and they harness the power of their aura site. And within one single night, Ajora summoned Ultima. Ultima descends and then literally sinks the entire capital of Muland under the sea.
Oh my god.
And Ajora dies within this one night. And so with that, Ivalice gets freed. It is now no longer under the control of the kings and queens in Muland. Muland is no more, and because of Ajora's deeds, has now been elevated to sainthood. And then stories of Ajora get spread throughout the land and the country, and that gets shared. And then reverie gets shared of Ajora being a otherworldly power and that answered Ajora's calls. And so you fast forward from that, which I'll go more into Ultima, really, and the Orsight in a moment, like when we get later into this, but like we'll fast forward a little bit, and then we go to the War of the Lions story. So the War of the Lions story is really important because it obviously includes some of the main cast that appear in this Ivalice Raid series, Ramza and Delita both being the two key factors. Now, what is the most common and accepted story of the War of the Lions, and in 14, was regarded as just a tale of fairies, like it's a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't believe that ever happened, because to like put into like concept of how long ago this was, Dalmasca as a country has been Dalmasca for over 1,500 years.
Oh, it's a big leap.
Yeah, and Ivalice, even though like when you compare it to 12 and Tactics, it's flip-flopped because 12 happens before Tactics. And,
Yeah, that's right.
And 14, 12's story is kind of being referenced here in the current time, whereas Tactics' story is the past. So it's flip-flopped now, and so we've had Dalmasca as a country on top of where Ivalice used to stand, and we know from like a small line from Ramza Lexentale, where he calls it an antediluvian fucking country, in which I didn't even know what that meant at first, and I had to look it up. But antediluvian is just like apparently means pre-flood, and when you look at the world's history, the flood had happened. The one that flooded the entire world happened 1,500 years ago. So we know Dalmasca precedes that. So that means Ivalice's story is even further back than that. And so Delita was a commoner. He's a lowborn. Wasn't respected, obviously, because he's not a noble. He's not a lord. He doesn't own land. He doesn't have his own castle. All that stuff. Delita, through the War of the Lions, rises up to power, brings peace to Ivalice, and becomes the new king to usher in an everlasting peace for Ivalice.
Yep.
And so the Return to Ivalice story is about the question of that, obviously, is that the true story? Just like it was in Tactics, where instead of it being just the story of Delita, we talk about his friend that is lost to history, Ramza. And so you start off with the first character who kind of like sparks this whole thing off because of his obsession.
Mm-hmm.
Was Sid's college roommate. I think it's college they were friends with. But his college roommate, Genomus Lexentale, who was a playwright over in Garlemald.
God, now I'm just thinking of like Sid going to state college.
Yeah, he's sitting there just like he's still jacked as shit. Everybody's good friends with him, and he's got the nerd and his roommate. It's just Genomus, Lexentale just writing his stories.
Yeah, and then you got Nero in the background. Be like, man, I wish he was my roommate.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, that's a big tangent, but
No,
come
it's
on.
fucking funny, dude. Nero just stalks in the corner. I love it.
Man, got a cool new roommate.
So
best friend.
Genomus is a playwright. Loves theater, all that shit.
Wow, he even
And-
writes plays.
Yeah, he writes plays. And so with his plays that he writes, he ends up meeting an actress named Tia. And those two become close where, they wed. And
were
they,
they-
actually...
Were they a Makote?
Tia? No. That's just her name.
That's,
God.
I think I was like,
no,
Was that like-
no relation to Graha Tia. No
yeah.
relation.
Well, just Makotes in general.
Yeah, because there's all the Tias and Noons. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, actually.
That seems like a weird choice, but okay.
Yeah, so with a weird naming convention, Tia becomes pregnant, and on a
Wait.
vacation...
Tia's. Oh wait, no, whatever. Don't worry about it.
Oh my god, dude.
Tia becomes pregnant, and then they go on a vacation to Rebanaster, where he proposes to her to get married. And it's kind of fucked up in context because this happens, right?
Yeah.
And from current time in Final Fantasy XIV, we know that Rabanastre has been under controlled by the Garleans for 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So now that they are a subsect of the Garlean Empire, these two Garleans come down for a vacation within Rabanastre's the capital city of Dalmasca.
Jeez.
Oh wow, in context, that seems really fucked up.
Yeah.
Something about conquering just, really brings romance out.
Really satisfies that itch, doesn't it?
So Genomus ends up, marrying her. She has 2 kids, Ramza and Alma, who Genomus actually named the 2 children after the 2 characters, obviously, from the Zodiac Braves Story.
Mm-hmm.
And he names them after this obsession of his so he would never forget his life goal. Because he has in his possession the Durai Papers, which are really old text that was passed down from his ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though he goes by the name Genomus Lexentail, his real name, and he's actually not really a Garlean, is Aroslam Durai.
Oh, like the same one from the record keeper from Tactics?
Yes, the same guy who tells the story of Tactics.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that was supposed to be the parallel, obviously. He's the storyteller in Tactics, and now he's the storyteller and the truth finder here in 14.
Mm-hmm.
So with this, he has his obsession, he has his 2 kids, and then he continues to write the Zodiac Brave Story for a play. Unfortunately, his wife becomes ill, eventually dies, and she gives him one last request to make sure their children never come to harm. Genomus, with her death, becomes consumed within the story. His story gets really popular within Garlean Empire. And Solus Zos Galvis, which is Emmett, really loves the story. Enjoys the play, thinks it's amazing, and literally awards him the giant airship that we meet them on. It was just a gift from fucking Emmett Selk the entire time.
Does it ever go into specifics why he likes the play, or?
It never goes into specifics. We just know that he really enjoyed it. He just really enjoyed the play itself. And I guess it probably is just fun for him because I guess from Emmett's perspective, none of this really matters anyway. And he just enjoys seeing the story and just wasting time with it.
Yep.
It's just a fun little way for him to pass time. Unfortunately, we know that Solus, Emmett's character, his body dies, and then he moves on, and then there's the huge civil war that happens in Garlemald, where then Varus takes over. And after Varus takes over, he then starts restricting all of the freedoms of playwrights and creates a board of censorship. And through that, he actually deems one of the most popular plays in Garlemald, the Zodiac Braves Story, as it needs to change. He's like, it's not acceptable anymore. And so with that, Genomus, or Rosalind, whatever you want to call him, flees away from Garlemald, and decides to finally pursue the Empire Ivalice. He is finally going to come to the truth of it. And so that's where the story starts. That's all the background stuff that leads into the raids.
Leads to the first quest.
Yep, it leads to the first quest where they ask us to help find their father, where we meet Alma and Ramza. They want us to help find him, figure out where he is. And so we then head to Rabanastre. And the one we see, Rabanastre that we see, is still the capital city of Dalmasca and everything. But obviously when you go into the raid, it's completely destroyed. Mm-hmm. It is broken straight down into nothing but rubble, and there's just gaping holes in the floors now, and no buildings left standing, and there's just thieves and stuff just running through the streets. It's just pandemonium everywhere. And the reason that happened, and because that destruction only happened kind of recently in the story, because of after Doma's liberation, the Dalmascans tried their own rebellion, Which that's kind of a running theme in Dalmasca's history through the 30 years is they've constantly kept fighting against the Garlemald. They constantly had rebels always fighting the government against Garlemald and wanted to free their own country. But they always got their asses kicked to them. They just got kicked to the curb every single step of the way. So with the most recent rebellion that they did, and with the Doma liberation succeeding, they wanted to make sure that Dalmasca got the message that, hey, it's not happening here, and just completely bombarded the capital. And so with the bombardment of Rabanastre, it destroys just splinters the resistance, and like that's the reason why Dalmasca tells Hien that they won't join the alliance with them, is because they're so splintered, like so fractured and so devastated from that bombardment that they literally cannot offer people, because they don't even know where like half their own rebellion is at this point.
Yeah, so they're just facing extinction at that point then,
Yeah, they were running very few at that point. And like with the few that they did have, there was many more that they couldn't find or just had no way to communicate with. Mm. And so, you go through Rabanastre, you go through the raid. Really great raid. I really think it's fun. The Ivalice raids, obviously my favorite in the entire Final Fantasy XIV. Best 24-man content.
I'll agree with that.
All of it's super fun.
I mean, you can't beat a good Labyrinth of the Ancients, though.
The classic tried and true, the daily Labyrinth. It's so mind-numbing, those Labyrinth of the Ancients runs, man.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Ivalice raids got kind of mind-numbing with the weapons grind.
For all the Boja content, so you can get your weapons. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had to keep running them constantly. Because, like, I think at that time, like, the drop rate that you could get in Boja... Yeah, it was really bad. The drop rate was really bad in the Fates and Boja, so it was just better to run the raids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you got one guaranteed... No, was it 3 guaranteed? From their doing one raid, but still.
Yeah. And it was that, or, like, what was it, like, a 10% drop rate from a Fate? Like...
It didn't even feel like 10%. Probably less than 1%.
Yeah, it felt way worse than that. So we meet the bosses through Rabanastre are very much wielders of the Orsight from the Zodiac Braves story that I mentioned a little bit ago. Mm-hmm. Where, the Zodiac Braves used the Orsight that they were given to harness power to, protect the people and uprise against the kingdom in Mulan. The Ivalice, they are the same. I keep trying to, like, differentiate the two, but they are the same. They're the same country. It's just Mulan's a city.
Yeah.
But from all the people living in Mulan, so they use it to protect people. Whereas you run into people using those Aetherites for their own selfish desires here in Rabanastre. So you run into... Who was it? It was Mateus, Hashmal. I know Argath's the last one. Who's the third fight? I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Fuck. It's the dude on the chariot. Either way. So with Mateus, Hashmal, the third dude, and Argath are all wielders of Orsights, and that's why they become these big monsters, which are commonly referred to as the Lucavi in the original Tactics story. And so here, they're actually also still their own demons that are using the Orsight as a gateway to escape. So these Orsights were, yes, they can bring good. And that's the important distinction, is a lot of people think the Orsight is just immediately bad within the Ivalice story because it turns them into monsters and stuff like that. But it's because they're corrupting the inner desires of the already established wielder.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, those Orsights only take your deepest desires and then bring it forth. And sometimes when those deepest desires are like revenge or power and stuff like that, the Lucavi are very easily able to take those motivations to use as a gateway to bring themselves forth. So you fight them. Mateus is really cool. All of these Lucavi have the designs they have in 12. They look really good. Mateus looks super good, especially with his ice mechanics. Hashmal and his big tower is... I think it's like an okay fight. I think it's alright. I'm feel no one way or the other, honestly, about Hashmal's fight. I'm also...
It's one of the more annoying fights, in my opinion.
Yeah, because you could just die so easily just from it falling on top of you. You gotta play the slices right in the middle of a raid.
I suck at that already, so...
I am a little sad with Hashmal's design, though. I think 12's design is good, but I kind of like Tactic's design for Hashmal a little bit more, just because he looks in 14, like he does in 12, with the big weapons, the big scythe arm things, and then he's got the weird antlers. Whereas,
that's true.
Whereas, like, Hashmal and Tactics is just, like... I guess it's a little lamer. I like the subdued look of him, though. But he's literally just a giant-ass, buff-ass lion that's wearing these purple robes and is, like, legitimately just, like, the most intelligent creature. That's why he even got the name of Bringer of Order.
No, yeah, I'll agree with you. He looked pretty... I don't want to say good, but he looked clean in Tactics.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's a small preference. It's just like, I do think it's a little more boring of a design, but I enjoy the clean look of it.
It's not a bad design.
Nah. And then you fight the third guy who... Rafakal, that's his name. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Rafakal? But yeah, the chariot dude. The chariot fight's fun. I think it's a little fun. My favorite mechanic is where he picks a target and charges to them and then just blankets like the whole AoE of the rest of the fucking stage. And it's always fun to get someone new who gets targeted because then they just take him to the fucking farthest point, so you gotta sprint over to avoid it.
God, dude.
That shit cracks me up every time.
Yeah, I really do like the designs of the bosses.
Yeah, they look really good. It's really important to note a lot of the boss designs in this, whereas, yeah, they did take 12's designs. Some of the monster designs, like Rafokale, and even with Argath, who is Duma, who turns into Duma, is the fact that they are designed by... I forgot his name. So this raid series, obviously guest written by Matsuno, but some of the monster designs were done by the guy who does the monster designs for Garo.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember his name. I wish I did, but the monster designer from Garo worked on this Ivalice raid series and did a lot of the designs. Because the reason it's important that he helped is the fact that some of these designs didn't exist prior to him. Like Rafokale and Duma, which is Argath in the final fight, those two never appeared before as Lucavi. And so even though they were mentioned and they do have some lore written about them in the older games, they never actually appeared before. And so this is their first time we actually got to see them, which is really cool. It was so crazy to see Rafokale, and I didn't even realize that Argath turned into Duma for a long time. It caught me completely off guard. I was just like, damn, Argath got turned into a weird-ass monster. And so it's really important to bring up Argath at the final of Rabanaster, because I hate this character so much from the original Tactics, and I just kind of really like the idea that this loser, right? He dies. He dies in the War of the Lions, and then in this story for 14, his spirit is forced to walk the halls of Lasalia, waiting for someone to arrive.
Jesus.
He never gets rest. He had to walk there for thousands and thousands of years until we finally stumbled upon him to kill him. Yeah, fucking Argath deserves the death, dude. Just
Yeah, I mean, he deserves what he gets. He's a fucking terrible ass person.
yeah, he's a terrible person. Always talking about how, I'm noble born, you're low blood, you're literally worse than my dog. I'm just like, bro, you gotta stop talking about like that, man. And so, with a raid series that progresses, once you beat Argath, you do end up finding a Roslam or Genomus, whatever you want to call them. And then, the whole trade interaction with the Bongas happen, where they use him as a negotiation tool to get the ore site from you. What is that Bonga's name? Is it Bogaman?
Gamnon?
Bagamnan, yeah. I always want to like over enunciate the A on like Bonga's name.
Yeah. Because they always got that sneaky apostrophe in there.
Yeah.
Goddamn apostrophe.
And then all that happens, and then we have to then help the Bongas find their leader, Bogamnan, and go to Readerana Lighthouse.
But Gamnon.
I'm gonna butcher this name. I'm so glad this was the last. Like this little part of the section is the last time I have to say his name because I'm gonna butcher it again. I know.
Isn't he like in quite a few of the quests, like cutscenes?
Yeah, all of it leading up to Rita Rana and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so like he has a really sad story too. And so what drives him to be consumed by the ore site as well, as you know that he harbors regret for what happened with the princess when the Guardians attacked 30 years ago. And that's what ends up making him be consumed and becoming Yasmat. And it's really it's such a sad story because he was the bodyguard of Princess Ashe 30 years ago. And during the attack, her brother, and her father were the current reigning family, which they've been the current reigning family for legitimately the 1500 years that Damascus has been a country. So this one family has consistently led Dalmasca through tried and true. And so Rassler ends up dying during the war against the Guardians. And then Ashe was supposed to be protected as well by Bogamnan. Bogamnan. Bogamnan.
Make up your mind.
I know, I gotta pick one. But now I'm like flip-flopping.
You're gonna psych yourself out, dude.
I am psyching myself out. I gotta chill. And then what happens is, unfortunately, Ashe is killed before his... not killed, but he loses track of her entirely. And unfortunately, she was trying to flee the fortress with him, and unfortunately, she dies before she reaches the freedom, and he completely blames himself for the fall of Dalmasca. Because shortly after that, the king, after knowing that his two kids have died, forfeits. He just gives up. He doesn't care anymore. And so Dalmasca then, becomes part of Garlean rule. And so then we go to Readerana, where those hateful feelings and all that, and those regrets allow him to be consumed by the ore site. And then we go through fights. Famferit and Belias, both super cool fights. Famferit with his Tide Pods and his water abilities.
Fucking Tide Pod. That's one way to fucking say it, yeah.
That's the name that stuck with me the most in these raid series. It's just his little Tide Pods. You just gotta get a little taste of their Tide Pod challenge, dude. It's that simple.
Stop, dude.
And Belias's clock abilities are super cool. Again, 12's design's really good. I kind of miss Tactics' design. I like the blue in contrast to his fire abilities. But that's just a small nitpick. I can't complain at all because he looks super sick in this. But the fight we gotta talk about the most, though, from Readerana is Construct 7.
That's the best way. Because
can't do
it
math.
exposes everyone who doesn't know how to do math.
It exposes I can do my parse, but I can't fucking.
One isn't a prime number, y'all.
So many people screw that up. It's so funny. Construct 7 is great. I love this character. I love everything about it. There's so many like nods to his story and tactics and how he's just this big robot that just like will literally do anything that's instructed of him. And like it cracked me up to no end after he does the black hole, and then everyone does their group mechanic, and then they go back to the initial boss fight, and he's just sitting there dancing, waiting for everybody to return. Oh my god, it made me laugh so hard as he does his little pirouette. It just reminded me of the scene in Tactics when you first get him, and then they're like, what do we do? Give him an order. And he's like, I don't know, just dance. And he just does a little dance. It's such a good callback, and I love it so much. And it's also a fight that requires like you to not only be able to do math, but also move quickly. Because when he does the dispose with the chest lasers, he starts zooming across that battlefield with his lasers, dude. It's death if you don't keep moving.
To be honest, I kind of blanked it out of my mind. That's how painful it was. Running through that first time, like now when like I have 80 gear and like my eye level's maxed out, it's like not that bad.
It was rough the first time.
Yeah, it was rough the first time.
It's such a fun fight because like yeah, it's on top of it. Not only is it kind of like tough to keep up with, but when you hit the halfway point after he does the black hole into the group mechanics where you appear for dancing, he then just activates accelerate, which just makes him faster, and he just keeps going. He's just like, no, dude, there's no breaks here. We're gonna get faster. You gotta get faster with math.
Learn math. You're gonna learn math.
All gas, no brakes. Am I right?
All gas, no brakes. Gotta drink that White Claw.
Freaking Sid and fucking whatever his face was at State College. Sid
is definitely the dude to crack a fucking monster can and do a backflip.
Sid would shotgun a monster.
He would definitely do it. Just chugging through. While the entire time Genomus has got his little notebook held to his chest. He's like, oh my god.
Oh my god.
Man. This shit's so funny. But then, like, it's really fun because then we start diving directly into the tactics story through this raid series. Yeah. Where, because then the current Ramza Lexentail then gets possessed from the Orsite you find. Where
was this when he started acting like a dick to us, or was he already acting like a dick to us?
He was already acting like a dick. This is where he starts becoming kind.
Right. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, because I really thought that was a good parallel where the Ramza Lexentail in the Ivalice raids has the exact opposite personality of Ramza from Tactics. Mm-hmm. It's such a cool like breakaway from the two characters where the Ramza that we know is like rude, insulting, and has a short temper in a lot of situations, whereas the old Ramza Beowulf is very kind, caring, and he is also very understanding of everybody he meets. And so having that cool, like, the opposites of them, despite having the same name, is really interesting. And it, like, threw me for a loop for a hot minute. Because, like, before I realized how much, like, how far back this was gonna go, I was just like, this is the new Ramza? I was like, ugh.
Hashtag not my Ramza.
Yeah. I, like, rejected it so hard. I was like, ugh. It's so funny.
On this planet.
And so then we obviously have to go into the best raid, 24-man raid that exists in this game, Orbone Monastery. And so to even be able to get into this place, you have to make the deal with Fran. Which, seeing Fran here, great. Vieira's being added to the game was such a good addition. I was not expecting to see Fran from 12 be just whole hog in this game.
Right?
Her leading the rebellion and then making the deal that guides you to Orbone. You know, you have to bring her supplies and shit from everybody that's profited off of her off of her country effectively.
Oh my god.
And so they needed money and supplies, so that's the deal that they have to make. And they're just like, yeah, we'll try our best. And then she guides us, right? And one thing that's really interesting in this, as well, is the cutscene where she tells, she's in the waterways, and she talks to Ash, and she's just like, yeah, Lady Princess Ash, we'll be able to do this. And it's so bizarre in that moment, because the Ash she's talking to is really young. She looks like she's like 20, 25. Which doesn't line up at all with the timeline in the slightest for Dalmasca, because
Yeah, she should be like... She should be way older.
Yeah, she should be in her 50s.
Yeah.
And yet it doesn't look like she aged a day. And so, like, it had me, like, so curious. I was just like, is this just someone pretending to be Ash just so she can take over after all of this?
Well,
I mean,
I guess we'll never know.
And so,
put
like,
into context with Ivalice, at least, you know. That wouldn't be a first time.
no, it's not the first time.
Nah.
It probably won't ever be the last. And so the Orbone Monastery raid is such a good raid series.
I will agree.
And it manages to, like, be able to gain so much of this series. Like, it's able to do so much of what Tactics brought to it, and also what, like, it honors everything that came before in, like, a really cool way, in, like, a unique way as well, with the fights of Mustadio, Ogris, and Sidolphus Orlando. And then even the final fight, Ultima.
Oh, that Sid fight.
It's super good. Like, the Sid's fight's, like, my favorite fight in any 24-man. Like, straight through.
It's really good.
Mustadio's is a really fun fight. Calling back to him being one of the original... Like, he's not the original, but he's one of the early pioneers of what, a machinist is in Final Fantasy.
Yep.
Bro, if Machinist was Mustadio's fight, I would be a Machinist.
Just being able to pull out a sniper rifle and just, like, shoot someone down from, like, 200 miles away.
Exactly.
And then with Ogris is a really cool one where her Holy Knight abilities are really well, like, performed throughout the fight. Like, them reusing all the old assets from Tactics is a really cool fight. And then also is used, like, even, like, the voice lines that she has to use as a chant is also able to bring back a lot of the old feelings from Tactics, because they just whole hog reuse the dialogue from Tactics, but getting to hear it voiced just gives it a whole new feeling. And so, like, it really is super cool. I enjoy it a lot.
Honestly, I kind of want to go back and run through them now that we've run through Tactics with you.
Yeah.
Just get a new appreciation of it.
Right, because, like, an outside perspective of it, because I didn't really play Tactics or War of the Lion specifically, or 12. So you can't really, like, you can appreciate it, but also there's so much you miss out on.
Yeah.
Simply because you haven't played through the games. I mean, that's just the Final Fantasy XIV experience, really. Is like,
To be fair, the
Yeah.
entire raid series was just a love letter to Tactics in 12.
I mean, this entire game is that.
Yeah.
It's just
Very fair.
love. Like, especially as someone who hasn't really played Final Fantasy games, like, it's interesting to go back to these raid series and, like, all these other references in 14 and just experience them after the fact.
Yeah. It's completely a 100% a love letter to it. It does nothing but just, like, honor everything that came before it, with, like, a really cool, like, new twist on it. It's super good, and I respect all of the work that Matsuno, Yoshi-P, and the development team put into this, because they were definitely trying their best to honor fans of the series. Especially with, like, when we get to Sidolphus' fight. Sidolphus' fight is the greatest fight in the 24-man raid series, and also, like, through the mechanics, tells a little bit about Sidolphus himself. Because in Tactics, he's a sword saint, which means he knows every ability that is performed with the sword. And then you get all of the Holy Knight abilities that he shares with Algris in the fight. And then not only with that, but then he also has his own mechanics which we know because of Seed of Sacrifice, he's even using Dark Knight abilities within the fight. Showing that he even like has mastered the abilities of Holy Knight and Dark Knight just to fight you with. And then not to mention that he has the best voice lines in any of the content for Raid series.
I will agree with that.
His voice is so commanding. And so like it's really good because like even though he shares a few voice lines with Algris, the delivery from the two are drastically different. And like because like when Algris does it, she does it as like a chant and a prayer, whereas like she's very hopeful in a lot of her lines, whereas Sidolphus's comes as a threat and like just like full on like contempt.
I feel like he's gonna absolutely destroy me.
Yeah. His is like a straight up abilities. Like hers are abilities of testing you, and then Sidolphus feels like he's not even trying to test, he's just trying to go for the kill.
Yeah.
If you can't even handle this much, like, what's the point?
Yeah, and I'm so glad they honored him so well, because like in tactics, like his story, in that story, fucking Sidolphus was the strongest character lore wise and gameplay wise in that game. And for him to be just as powerful in this story as well makes me appreciate it so much.
You know, when we were going through the tactics playthrough that you were having me watch through, I was really expecting Sid to turn into a giant monster. And I was very surprised when it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's nothing like that at all in the original tactics. Mustadio, Algris's, Sidolphus's, and even Ultima's designs in this raid series are all done by the Garo monster designer as well. And so that's why they got these really cool outfits and like really cool designs in this fight. And then after all of the testing from them, obviously we go into the Ultima fight. And this is what I was really like, I had to like lay all the groundwork prior to this, because Ultima is probably the most interesting part of this raid series when you really dig down into it. Because Ultima is an interesting case in the fact that it is a extra dimensional cosmic being. It's not a void scent, it's not a primal, it is legitimately a monster that is from an extra dimension, like another dimension, that just saw the aura sites that Ultima created as a way to try and get to these dimensions as a call to Mulan to attack. And when Ultima came down and struck Mulan, at this point, Ultima actually, in 14, Ultima didn't have any, like, intelligence. I don't want to say intelligence because that's not correct, but it didn't have a thought pattern. It didn't have language it could speak, nothing like that. It didn't really have a full sentience.
Yeah.
And so it's this extra dimensional being that appears and strikes Mulan and then even kills Ajora in this story. And it's such a powerful threat in that fight, back all the way with Ajora, that Hydaelyn herself had to intervene. Hydaelyn had to be the one to seal Ultima.
That's pretty crazy.
That was the type of monster that Ultima was, that Ajora unwittingly brought to the world.
I thought Hydaelyn was basically asleep, though. Or, like, acts through others, I guess.
That's how I normally take it as well, is that she uses Warriors of Light and stuff like that to do her bidding, and she grants them power through them. But from everything I've read, because I did a little research on how Ultima is presented in 14, and it said Hydaelyn herself had to intervene to seal Ultima. After Hydaelyn's Warrior of Light at the time, Ajora, because Ajora is also the Warrior of Light of their generation, had summoned Ultima with the Aura Sight.
That would probably make Hydaelyn... That would be, like, Hydaelyn's last great act.
Yeah.
Recorded in history, at least.
Yeah. And then it wasn't even enough to stop it, because then the Zodiac Braves story happens with Ramza, and Ultima is freeing herself from the seal. She is trying to escape it. And because of all of the reverence that happened with Ajora's actions and becoming a saint, has now gained sentience. Because of everybody's prayers and worship that went in to Ultima, and now has granted it abilities far beyond what it had originally. And so Ramza is a warrior of light in his generation, and then he has to fight Ultima. And so in 14's story, the final confrontation with Ultima happens, and they aren't able to actually defeat Ultima. And so they have to seal Ultima away. And then hope that maybe in the future, another warrior of light will be strong enough to actually finally get rid of this monster from our world.
That's crazy.
Yeah, which of course is our character.
Right. You know, just warrior of light things.
Yep, the warrior of light.
Yep. Not just warrior of light, the warrior of light.
Yeah,
Warrior of light.
it's super cool. And because of the fact that, like, with that huge fight and the prayers, she's become sentient, as able to do things that she originally didn't do. And after all the testing, you even get a cool, fun moment where Sidolphus, Ogris, and Mustadio all help, and Ramza all appear to help you fight Ultima, to try and finally seal her away. And so with that, Ultima does obviously get defeated at the end of this, and is finally freed. Like, the world is free from her tyranny that she brought. And it's so interesting because, like, after this happens, we obviously get the epilogue and everything like that. And it's really cool because instead of it being commonly referred to as just like, I'm trying to think of the word for it. Because the way that story is told in 14 is different than the way it happens in Tactics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Where instead of, you know, all of them, like Ramza and Alma escaping and then getting to escape to live together and live happy lives afterwards, Ramza had to sacrifice himself to seal away Ultima. Instead, that's how it's told. And so it's really interesting because then Arazlam changes the play Zodiac Braves Story to match the original Tactics ending, which would completely make it the same as Tactics' story told through Arazlam Durai in that story.
Clever.
Oh my god.
And another thing, I wasn't sure how I felt about it when I first saw it. I'm still kind of iffy on it now, but Alma having Oren Durai's kid, which was actually the connection where Genomus is actually their great ancestor, you know, all those greats ancestor, because he is the ancestor to that child from both Oren Durai and Alma Beowulf.
Only thing I have to say to that is that's great. No, that's actually really cool.
And so it's just like it's connected all the way down, and because of their connection to Ivalice and his obsession with it, it ends up being able to finally close the book to Ultima and the battle with it with Ramza.
You know, Matsuno did not have to go this in depth with the story. Like, he did not have to. He was not obligated at all to.
No,
You didn't have to.
Dude, do you say this is in depth? I am like skimming over so much shit just to get like this like streamlined to talk about.
Yeah.
It. There is so much more in this that
I mean, as
like,
evidenced by like a majority of the podcast is just you talking and explaining story.
Yeah, I'm just having to explain it all. Because like, there's one more thing I just want to say with the story that happens before we go into like more of the funner like topics instead of just summarizing everything.
Oh, you mean when we actually start the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh my god, dude.
And so it would be like, I was so satisfied to actually get to see Delita and Ramza get to see each other again at the end of this raid series.
That was kind of
Right?
cool.
Right?
It was so nice because you don't get that in Tactics. They never see one another again.
It's
Yeah,
so
delete it kind of
bittersweet.
fucks off.
And so
And
it
Rams
was,
is just a guy.
it was nice to have that closure. I was really happy about that. But man, it's so crazy to think that they never knew each other all that time. It also makes me think about, because like when you first do the Ogres fight, Ogres's fight, she finishes the fight as she like fades away, just like my Ovelio waits, and I'm just like, you've been here sealed this entire time. I wonder if you know what happened to Ovelio in her life. Because that was not a happy ending at all.
So it's such a sad story.
I know. And it's like, Tactics is so well written. Like, it completely earned the ending 100% through it. But it's so interesting because, like, talking about Ultima's religious views from the Dalmascans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's actually two major, like, there's a lot of religions within Dalmasca. Dalmasca is a big trade country, and so it actually has a lot of different races, a lot of different beliefs, a lot of different cultures, all like as a big mixing pot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a majority of them are believers of the light of Kiltia, I believe is what it's called. And so what they believe was, Saint Ajora brought freedom, and with the messenger of God, Ultima, came down, answered their calls, and gave them freedom. Right? That's the primary religion of what Dalmasca was, prior to the Garleans outlawing religion entirely. But there was also a subsect of that religion that got labeled as radicals and was outlawed within Dalmasca, was the sect of Germanique.
Oh, Germanique.
Oh my god.
Which
What?
Well, do you not remember?
That's the name I remember from Tactics.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
it's not one and the same, luckily, because in Tactics, Germanique revealed that, Ajora was not a noble person whatsoever, and used these demons to enact his own desires.
Rhymes.
Or if you ask 12, her desires. They flip flop back and forth, which that's cool. But Germanique reveals all that in Tactics, and it's like it's supposed to be the truth. But in 14, the sect of Germanique changes the concept of that Ultima was a messenger of God, but Ultima is a god, is God.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe that the holy stones, the Orosite that the Zodiac Braves use, are the closest way to be able to get to God and bring them closer while bringing messengers of God to them. And because of those wishes and those beliefs, every time a sect of Germanique is able to get an Orosite, it literally brings nothing but destruction and mayhem, as Lucavi used them to like bring chaos.
God, dude. Imagine these stones just fucking lying around the country.
It's just like it's like a little fucking pebble on the sidewalk. He's just like, hey, what's
Like, ooh,
this?
this is a pretty rock. Oh fuck.
It just brings nothing but death, dude. And so, like, yeah, there's so many cool things, and it's just, I loved everything about this raid series. Another thing I really appreciated from it was the fact that, unlike a lot of the other songs in the series, or like the other raids and stuff like that, Soken will usually do a cover or a rendition of the song previous and then bring it over into 14. They didn't do that at all. They use pretty much the songs from 12 and the tactics from Sakimoto and kept them whole hog. Just put the songs from those games just in. and they didn't change anything about it. And I think that was the right move. I think that was 100% the right move, and I completely appreciate them doing that. Like, getting to hear all of these old songs that I grew up on and like listened to from playing that game over and over, and just getting to hear them again in this new tale, like a similar but newish take on this tale, was everything I could wish for from this raid series. And I think their respect and love for tactics and for some of the story in 12 really shines through this raid series, and I appreciate it every step of the way.
Thank you all for watching that episode of the Free Company Chat, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. This episode wouldn't have been possible without our amazing editor. I hope you guys send him a tip over at his Kofi. That's going to be ko-fi.com/Pandasol. Also, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow us on our Twitter at Free Company Chat. And yeah, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Later.